So the AIM campuses, there are 15 of them around the United States, and really our goal is to, on one hand, produce as many FAA certified aircraft mechanics as we can. We know that there's this dire shortage of aircraft mechanics, specifically FAA certified aircraft mechanics throughout America and worldwide. And so we're doing our very best part to bring resolution to that by putting trained certified technicians into the workforce. But I would say maybe a little less visible is our desire to make changes, positive changes in communities that we serve. We're in 15 major cities around America, and we put our campuses in places where we can make the maximum impact, not only on workforce development, but on the lives of the citizens around. So it's common that you'll find our schools, our campuses, our programs trying to make a difference in the community lives, and certainly trying to put a lot of certified technicians to work. So at Aviation Institute of Maintenance, 85% of our students are all focused on the AMT, Aviation Maintenance Technician program. It's our bread and butter, it's what we do. But it's very common for us to ask the additional question, what else does that city need? So for example, at our school in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a big need for certified welders, and we have a welding program that is an adjunct or an addition to that aviation program. At our Orlando campus, no big surprise, it's an HVAC program where we train HVAC technicians. Here in our Chicago campus, we're actually developing not only an HVAC program, but also a machinist program for other industrial trades. And so, though AIM always starts with aviation maintenance as its core offering, we also ask the question, what else does the community need? What other can people take advantage of in certification programs? And so there are really a range of additional programs we can add. So the Chicago campus is truly dear to my heart and to our vision as an organization. The Chicago campus opened in September of 2021, so it's today just over 2 years old. We have our first couple of dozen students who have graduated. It's a 21-month program, so only over the last few months have we had graduates. And really what this school demonstrates is how we look at the demographics of a city and say, how can we make the biggest difference that we can? In 2019 and 2020, I was looking for locations for our Chicago campus. We know this. There are two major airports in Midway and O'Hare in Chicago. Just about every major and regional airline flies into Chicago, and yet there has never been an FAA certified aircraft maintenance school in the city of Chicago. There's one about an hour and a half away up north, one about an hour to the west, but nothing for the citizens of Chicago to say, I want to stay here, I want to become an aircraft mechanic. And so Chicago was important for us in that. But I scheduled a visit of 25 different locations before we selected the one that we are. We looked at some in the western suburbs in the north part of the city, where O'Hare is. We looked at some that were actually downtown in the sort of the metroplex of the business center. The shortcomings in my mind were I needed to be where the most folks who needed the types of careers that an aviation maintenance career could make a difference in their lives. And so right here on the south side is where we chose. We found an open warehouse that had not been built out and turned it into a pretty beautiful aviation maintenance campus, one of the finest campuses in the country as far as I'm concerned. You asked about the significance. I will say that our being able to serve Southside Chicago students with a bus ride away, sometimes a bike ride away, sometimes a walk away, and a drive away, it is so essential. Many of our students come from only blocks away. When class is about to start, you'll see students walking in, riding a bus in, being right here in their, not just their hometown, but their home turf, where they can look at this place and say, this is where I can build a new future and find work that is not only lucrative, but sometimes life-changing for my family, and that's what we're here to do. Our students come from an extremely diverse background. 39% of our students are African American. 40% of our students are of a Hispanic or Latino background. We have about 5% who are of an Asian background. Altogether, 87% of our students are minority students, coming from, and most of them coming from Southside Chicago, which means they're not typical college students, and they need a small army of support systems around them. So if you're an AIM student, not only will you get authentic financial advising and support with scholarships and grants. Many of our students are on some type of scholarship or grant. We make that available to them. But we also have student advising that allows them to work through the life solutions that could threaten their ability to continue on as a student. Every AIM student knows who their student services coordinator is to help them coordinate all the benefits and all of the motivation that they need to stick with the program. And probably the most important is our career services that we offer. That is to say, every student, as they near the latter half of the program and get ready for graduation, work directly with the Career Services Coordinator in the American Airlines Career Services Center. That's a lot of words, but it's just to say our marquee employers have branded not only this school, but also the facilities that support the students as their own. And so it's very common. I was talking to a student who's graduating in 2 weeks. He already has his job at Air Wisconsin. He knows exactly where he's going as he finishes his certification exams. And this sort of school to work pattern is so essential. And the only way we can accomplish that is by surrounding students with support throughout the entire program. It's such an interesting question, the relevancy and up-to-date nature of the program. On one hand, we serve the master of the FAA's A&P, Airframe and Power Plant certification. And we all know that the FAA doesn't update their A&P certification with much frequency, right? They're updating the exams now, and we understand that within the next year or two there will be an update, but that update only happens every few decades, actually. And so we have to continually make sure that our program fits the needs of the student as they're sitting for the exam, and yet there's almost a competing need for the students to be prepared with the type of aircraft and systems and functions that they'll need to do when they walk into the workplace. Bottom line is, the last thing I want is a student going into United Airlines or American Airlines or an MRO or a manufacturer like Boeing and saying, yeah, I don't know these things because I only studied for the A&P, right? And so we have to actually make sure that the program prepares them for certification and gets them certified when they're in the program, but also make sure that we're serving just an abundance of different types of technologies and give them the exposure so they'll be confident whether they go to a major, minor, regional, or manufacturer. Wherever they go, we want them comfortable. So the way we do that is, if you look around any one of our hangars, you'll see at least a dozen aircraft, you'll see a helicopter, you'll see turboprops, you'll see, in some cases, a dope and fabric structure, very old aircraft, and in some, like the Learjet behind me, and a full systems jet. And so we expose the student to just about every type of system and platform that they can potentially see. A lot of schools will say, well, I'll train them on what they need to know to get certified. What we say is, Certification is essential, but so is exposure to many platforms so that that confidence is in place no matter where they go to work afterwards. It's such an important question you ask. Why is it important for AIM to have a diverse background of students? And it would be possible for an aviation maintenance school to say, I'm not sure that is important. It would be possible for a school to say, nah, as long as I have enough students in my student body, why do I care whether it's a diverse background? And I think you can see AIM is extremely concerned about having a wide variety of students, a diverse background of students. Number one, the only way we're going to accomplish a workforce, alleviate the workforce shortage, is if we're able to dive into groups of people who are not usually represented in the aviation field. We know that the aviation field is 97% men. We know it's roughly 60% white men. And I personally believe that making the field of aviation maintenance stand out to white men is part of a very large part of the problem of why we have a shortage. By ignoring females, we have said no to about 50% of the population, right? And by only looking at a select population, we've eliminated so many who could be part of the solution for aviation. So that's one of the answers. And so here at the Chicago campus, I've already told you, we're 87% people of color, minority students. Our female population is 11% here at AIM Chicago, 17% across the nation, and that's very small. I look forward to being able to say now it's 35, now it's 40, now it's 50%. We're working very hard at that. But the bottom line is we can have the most impact in the communities we serve and the biggest impact on the aviation industry if we're making this clearly a workplace environment where people of color, people of many genders and identities can come forward and say, I'd love to be an aircraft mechanic. You know, I believe that the biggest challenge that we face is simply the challenge of awareness of this incredible career path for just about anybody. The challenge of awareness. If you ask any normal individual what is a career in aviation, they would say pilot, of course. So pilot is just on our minds with the iconic look of a man with a hat, right? And if you say, can you think of any other airline jobs? They say, well, the flight attendant then, right? And that's when it kind of stops. So rarely does anyone think about, well, what about that extremely skilled certified technician that's making a really good salary on the ground, keeping them safe? What about the mechanic? And that's the biggest challenge. When I'm asked, who's your biggest competitor? I don't name another school. We're all in this together, and there are almost 200 wonderful FAA certified aircraft technician schools in this country. We all work together. My biggest competitor is not another school. My biggest competitor is just getting the word out there that this is a wonderful career. It is a lifelong career. It's a multi-generational career, and it's a way to a six-figure salary in just a very short amount of time. So, boy, if I had a magic wand and could wave it 3 times, each time I would wave it at some different group to say, this is for you, and it's also for you. Luckily, the airframes and basic physics and aerodynamics of aircraft are just about the same, whether it's a fossil fuel generated aircraft like we fly today or an electric vehicle like we're likely to fly tomorrow. The way aircraft work will stay about the same. it's the engines and the propulsion systems and the power systems that will have the largest change. So I have my eye on hydrogen fuels. I have my eye on electric takeoff and landing vehicles. Certainly the the electric vehicles of the future are probably will replace automobiles at some point, where yes, flying cars will be part of what we need to be equipped to teach and take on. And so in our program, where airframe is half of the program and power plant is the other half, it's really that power plant that I'm interested in, and we're studying to see how we should be preparing to teach students with electric power plants in the future, and probably hydrogen and other kinds of replenishable fuels that will really kind of take part as part of our program. Sure, having great relationships with airlines does keep my students focused, gives them something to aspire to, but even more, it gives them a reason to believe in this field of education at all, right? Let me just say that again. Knowing that United Airlines is here multiple times a year, American Airlines comes at least 4 times a year to this very campus to interview students who are getting close to graduation. They're here, as you know, tonight, giving scholarships to students and making themselves aware. You can look around our walls and see the different employers who have said, let me make sure that my name is in front of these students, because when it's time for them to apply for a job, I want to be a household name for them. That type of awareness is so essential, because quite frankly, if I was a 22-year-old, 25-year-old young man or woman, and I came in and said, okay, you want me to spend a couple years going to airplane school, how do I know there's a job in it for me? Now, I can never promise them or guarantee them that there will be a job, but I have to bring my employers here on a regular basis. One, so that those students can get to know them, learn how to shake their hand, learn how to interview, even if it's not a formal interview, a conversation. I want to demystify that interviewing process. And so the result is, as my students are going through the program, they're actually interviewing while they're going through the program. They are selected for jobs before they even know it, because my airline partners are in here and they are literally keeping a list of the people they want to watch go through this program. And by the time we're at 20 months, 21 months, and they're graduating, the airline already knows who they want to hire. So it's this beautiful ecosystem where student learns, student has curiosity, student gets to know these employers. They usually only get to go to work for one of them, but they've already met so many, and it's just a wonderful way to educate students. In order to be a successful aircraft maintainer, a student doesn't necessarily have to have worked on cars when they grew up, don't necessarily have to have a big exposure or background in maintenance of any kind. What they do have to have is a serious dedication and investment in their own time and program. I tell my students, plan to come to class, but plan to stay after class. Plan to learn the names of tools. Plan to become an aviation person. I'll tell you, I know a lot of aircraft mechanics, and I don't know a single non-passionate aircraft mechanic. This either gets in your blood or it does not. And so what I say is, plan on investing your identity in this, because the more you can sort of absorb aviation as part of you, the more you'll become an aircraft mechanic, a professional aviation person, before you even know that's happening. My students will often say, I got so much out of AIM because I invested something in it, right? It's possible to take the classes and get good grades, but not actually invest your personal identity in it. I say, if you're not ready to buy in on almost a spiritual level, wait a year. Because really, the students who get the most out of it and who quickly go into industry and quickly be promoted into management positions in aviation are the ones who just live, breathe, and love aircraft. We try to put as many aircraft and as much experience into the student as possible to give them something to love, and my advice to them is come to love it and live it and breathe it.